The sun rose lazily over Maplewood Estates, casting long, golden shadows across well-manicured lawns and homes, designed to look identical in their pursuit of suburban perfection. Each house stood like a soldier in a battalion of conformity, obedient to the strict guidelines of the Homeowners Association. I had chosen this neighborhood for its tranquility, a respite from the chaos of city life. But tranquility, it seemed, was a fragile thing. Our self-appointed guardian of this peace, Karen, reigned supreme from her two-story fortress at the end of the cul-de-sac. Her gaze was sharp, like the edge of a knife, and just as cutting. The first wave of trouble washed over me with the force of one of those daytime soap opera reveals. A formal letter slipped through my mail slot, bearing the officious seal of the HOA. The accusation was as bizarre as it was petty, a violation of community standards for smiling. Too much. Smiling. Too much. I let the words roll around in my mind like marbles in a jar, their absurdity echoing with each turn. It seemed my contentment, my daily ritual of greeting neighbors with a genuine grin, had somehow offended the delicate sensibilities of our neighborhood watchwoman. I imagined her sitting in her living room, blinds half drawn, clutching a smartphone like a gavel, ready to judge. I knew her type. Every community has one. The self-appointed arbiter of what is right, who sees themselves as the unsung hero of order and predictability. Karen was a storm in a tailored pantsuit, determined to bend the world to her will, one complaint at a time. My initial response was simple. I resolved to maintain my peace, to continue living as I did, with an easy smile and a friendly wave. Perhaps she would tire of her crusade. Perhaps she would move on to another unsuspecting target. But Karen was nothing, if not tenacious. Her follow-up letters arrived with unnerving frequency, each more incredulous than the last. A smiling violation today, a laugh too loud tomorrow. Her imagination knew no bounds. As I read her complaints, a quiet determination settled over me, not of anger, but of resolve. I decided to counter her absurdity with its mirror image. I began to draft a motion for the HOA, a proposal as preposterous as her allegations, a motion to regulate facial expressions, hers, to be precise. The irony was delicious, like biting into a forbidden fruit. Would it work? Perhaps not. But that wasn't the point. It was about balance, about showing that even the self-proclaimed overseer of smiles could face the same ridiculous scrutiny. The neighborhood was our stage, and I was ready for Act 1 of this unintentional comedy. I mailed the draft, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. She might not appreciate the gesture, might not even see the humor, but for me, it was a quiet victory, a testament to the power of irony, of meeting absurdity not with anger, but with a perfectly poised response. Maplewood Estates continued to bask in its facade of peace, unaware of the brewing storm beneath its surface. And as for me, I stood ready, prepared to meet whatever came next with an unyielding smile. The sun filtered through the blinds, casting stripes of light across my living room. Each line seemed like a measure of time, a reminder of the days passing since Karen's latest crusade began. It started with a letter slipped under my door, accusing me of smiling. Too much. A peculiar offense, but Karen had a way of transforming the benign into the infamous. With the subtlety of a cat stalking a bird, Karen escalated her campaign. She was relentless, a force of nature in pastel cardigans and sensible shoes. It wasn't just my smile she targeted now, but the very fabric of my existence. Petunias planted an inch too close to the curb. My recycling bin placed at an angle she deemed improper. Every detail of my life turned into an infraction in her meticulous ledger of neighborhood righteousness. Karen wielded the HOA rulebook like a sacred text. Her interpretations were creative, if not entirely nonsensical. Smiling too much became excessive, outward positivity. An offense she insisted disrupted the neighborhood's harmony. Her logic was a labyrinth, twisted and winding. Yet, she delivered her judgments with the conviction of a zealot. The letters arrived with increasing regularity, each one a testament to her growing fixation. They were etched with the precision of a legal document, imploring me to adhere to the community's standards, to conform, as if my very existence was a blight upon our picturesque neighborhood. Amidst the barrage of citations, I became an unwilling actor in the theater of suburban lore. My face, once just my own, was now the subject of whispered conversations at backyard barbecues and book club meetings. I was the newest, juiciest scandal, and Karen delighted in her role as both director and narrator. In the quiet of the night, I found myself reflecting on this neighborhood tale spun into absurdity. It was a comedy of errors, though the humor was lost in the daily skirmishes. I wondered if Karen understood the irony of her crusade. Her face, always fixed in a stern expression, was far more disruptive than any smile could ever be. There was a certain power in her persistence, a tenacity that could almost be admired if it wasn't so misplaced. It was a battle of wills, conducted in the silent exchange of letters and the subtle shift of gazes at community gatherings. I chose my response carefully, the motion to regulate her face penned with the precision of an artist sketching their magnum opus. It was a statement, a reflection of the absurdity she had woven into our lives. My intent was not vengeance, but clarity, to hold a mirror to her antics. A mirror that, if she dared to look, might reveal the folly of her ways. As I slid my motion under her door, I felt a quiet satisfaction, a ripple in the calm, a gentle nudge to the equilibrium she so fiercely guarded. The irony was delicious, a dish best served with a side of humility. It was a subtle act, yet profound in its simplicity. In this quiet rebellion, I found a semblance of peace, a balance restored in the face of chaos. My smile, once scrutinized, now served as a silent testament to resilience. In the world Karen spun, it became clear that sometimes the most powerful act of defiance was simply to smile. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the meticulously manicured lawns of our neighborhood. It was the kind of evening where everything seemed to pause, suspended in the golden light. But under this serene facade, the air was charged, crackling with a tension that had grown as palpable as the scent of freshly cut grass. I strolled along the path winding through our community, my feet brushing against the gravel with a steady rhythm. The leaves rustled softly, whispering secrets among themselves, as if they too were aware of the simmering disquiet that had seeped into our lives. It was hard to ignore now, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words and sidelong glances. The consequences of my motion to regulate Karen's facial expressions had rippled outwards, reaching even the farthest corners of our once harmonious enclave. The absurdity of it all had not gone unnoticed. Neighbors were starting to watch, to whisper, and the curiosity was infectious. It was the kind of spectacle one couldn't look away from, like a slow-motion train wreck unfolding in familiar territory. As I walked, I noticed subtle shifts in the neighborhood, curtains that twitched slightly as I passed, like eyelids fluttering in disbelief, conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the communal spaces, only to resume at a lower conspiratorial volume. The quiet hum of normalcy had been replaced by something more volatile, a brewing storm beneath a veneer of suburban tranquility. Karen, of course, had continued her crusade, her indignation now a visible force, written in the lines of her furrowed brow and the stiff set of her shoulders. She moved through the streets like a general surveying a fractured battlefield, her face a mask of controlled fury. The irony was not lost on me. Here she was, a woman who had weaponized smiles, now caught in a battle of expressions. The neighborhood's reactions varied. Some were merely amused by the spectacle, joyfully recounting the tale of the smiling injunction at barbecues. Others were less appreciative, sensing the shift in dynamics, the way power had quietly realigned itself. Some spoke of community spirit, of harmony disrupted, their voices tinged with reproach. Yet, beneath it all, a new current was forming. It was in the way people started to nod at me in passing, subtle acknowledgments of the invisible lines that had been drawn. There was power in this quiet rebellion, a shared understanding that sometimes absurdity needed to be met with equal measures of its own ilk. As days passed, I found myself reflecting more on the nature of power, on the burdens it carried and the shadows it cast. Karen's relentless pursuit of control had sparked an unexpected awakening in the community, a realization that we too had a say in the tapestry of our lives. In the end, the motion I filed was more than a mere act of retaliation. It was a mirror held up to our collective faces, to the absurdity of the petty regulations that governed us. And as I watched the neighborhood shift, the lines of division slowly blurring into a tapestry of shared stories and laughter, I understood. Sometimes the most profound changes began with the simplest act of defiance. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of scarlet and violet. I turned back towards home, a faint smile tugging at my lips. It was a small act, perhaps, but one that spoke volumes. In this world of quiet battles and unspoken alliances, a smile could indeed be a powerful thing. The gray dawn mists hung like whispered secrets over our little cul-de-sac, shrouding the rows of pastel houses in a somber veil. It was the day of the HOA meeting, the day Karen's reign was to be challenged, perhaps even dismantled. The air tasted of damp earth and anticipation as I walked, my shoes crunching softly on the dew-strewn sidewalk. The community center loomed ahead, its brick facade a beacon of neutral territory. Inside, the usual suspects had gathered. The retirees with their silent wisdom, the young families clutching children and coffee cups, and, of course, Karen. She sat poised at her usual spot, the head of the long oak table, fingers steepled like some corporate deity presiding over her domain. I took my place among the others, feeling the weight of expectant eyes upon me. The tension in the room was a living thing, coiling around our ankles, tightening with every unspoken thought. We all knew why we were here. The motion I had filed lay in the center of the table, a symbol of defiance, wrapped in formal language and bureaucratic prose. Its presence charged the air with a quiet sense of rebellion. For too long, Karen's petty tyranny had gone unchecked, rules bent under her watchful eye, neighbors shrinking beneath her disapproving glare. Her accusations were as numerous as they were absurd. I had become her latest target, accused of transgressions so trivial that they bordered on the surreal. Smiling too much, she had claimed. An act of defiance, she deemed it. How curious, how telling. As the meeting commenced, the usual formalities unfolded with a practiced rhythm. But today the undercurrent of tension was palpable, like the moments before a summer storm, when the world holds its breath. As the agenda turned towards the motion, a murmur rippled through the room, a low hum of collective curiosity and veiled amusement. With deliberate calm, I stood to address the gathering. The words came steadily, honed by the clarity of purpose and the quiet strength of a long-suffering patience. I spoke of community, of harmony, and of the absurdity of policing smiles. Karen's expression remained unreadable, a mask of composure that betrayed nothing. But around the table, eyes began to shift, and nods of agreement surfaced like small, buoyant ships in a choppy sea. The irony was not lost on me. Here I was, petitioning to regulate the regulator, to challenge the face that dictated so many fates. The air seemed to thrum with the potential for change, the possibility of a new order where neighbors exchanged waves instead of wary glances. The decision, when it came, was swift and unanimous. Karen was to step down, her authority replaced by a committee that would ensure fairness and balance. As the vote was cast, her facade faltered, the first crack in a carefully maintained veneer. It was a moment both poignant and powerful, the fall of a self-appointed monarch, silent yet profound. In the aftermath, the atmosphere lightened, the community reinvigorated by its newfound freedom. We lingered, exchanging smiles that were no longer suspect, conversations that flowed with ease. The sun had finally broken through the clouds, casting a warm glow over our little corner of the world. As I left the center, I glanced back to see Karen, now just another face in the crowd, stripped of her crown. The irony of it all lingered in the air, delicate as a spider's web catching the morning light. We moved forward, a community restored, the echoes of a quiet revolution resonating in our hearts. And as I walked home, I couldn't help but smile, liberated from the shackles of trivial tyranny, ready to embrace the simple joys of life in our neighborhood once more.